The New York Liberty are not renewing head coach Sandy Brondello's contract. It's not necessarily a firing, but they're not bringing her back. They've decided to go separate ways. Now, Sandy Brondello has been to the postseason every single year since she's been in New York. She's won 2 championships, one in Phoenix, one in New York. I'll ask you, fair or foul, that the Liberty are parting ways with Sandy Brondello 1 year removed from a championship?
Yeah, I think it's foul. I think it's foul. My first thought, honestly, was how sweet is it to be Portland or Toronto in the next coming season? Seattle, right? In the next coming season. And we probably know there might be a couple more fires happen depending on how things go, right? This league is best drama series I'm watching right now. So I was shocked. In covering the New York Liberty this season and in getting the chance to like really build a relationship with Sandy Brondello. I think she fits what they were looking for, what they are trying to do. Again, 1 year removed from a championship, brought in a player like Emma Meeseman in the middle of the season, in the middle of a ton of injuries. It's concerning right now that there are some seasons that are ending for these teams because of injuries. Nothing else other than players not having health and time on the court. And yet it seems like there's no compassion for that. You know, I think of a Therese Witherspoon, coaching at Chicago a couple years ago. Like, no grace for, hey, challenge going through injuries, having a couple of rookies. But here, to me, I thought that New York played as good as they could have played in the playoffs. I think that they got there. I know that the end of the season wasn't what you would have wanted it to look like for the defending champs, but I certainly thought that she was keeping the standard in New York, that it was going to be better next year. And that there were several players that have been very vocal about choosing New York to play for Sandy. A Jonquel Jones, a Breanna Stewart who left Seattle to go there. You know, she had a Sabrina Escu, a Courtney Vandersloot who won the championship with them last year. So I'm interested to see what their plan is moving forward. I know we've all seen the Breanna Stewart clip by now where she's asked about, you know, Sandy possibly being fired, and she responds in, you know, a curse word, and she's like, well, what are you talking about? You know, and we stand behind our coach. And so I was blindsided by this. I think being in the media, sometimes you hear rumblings and rumors, but you don't believe it when a team has won a championship last year. It's New York. They're pumping so much money into this thing. They've got so many stars on that team. I'm just not sure why you give up a coach that has won 2 championships and risk them going to a competitor. Like, unless you're bringing in the next Becky Hammon who learned from Greg Popovich, maybe Cass and I don't know. I'm not sure who they're bringing in that would have the same level of pedigrees as Sandy Brondello, unless you're banking on somebody young to be new. And which, again, with all the superstars that you have that are a little bit older, that are towards the end of their careers, I wouldn't be doing that in Breanna Stewart's final years. I wouldn't be playing with it. But it seems like New York is.
And I do feel like Stewie's comments were totally genuine. That is genuinely how she feels about Sandy Brondello, because she could have said, you know, just the right thing, kind of coach speak, since Sandy Brondello was literally sitting right next to her. But she was saying, look, a lot of things could have gone wrong for us. She what was keeping this team together. Now, that reporter asking the question has caught some flack. The reporter asked the correct question. Unfortunately, sometimes the right questions are the uncomfortable ones. But I thought that Stewie was totally genuine in being, one, shocked at the idea that Sandy Brondello would go anywhere, and 2, in her support of Sandy Brondello. And I know that this Liberty team fell short of expectations. That the defending champions, with the amount of talent they have on their roster, bringing Emma Meeseman in, that their expectations were much more than a one and done in the playoffs. But we also have to add context. Jonquel Jones was injured at a point in this season. Breanna Stewart was injured at a point in this season. Sabrina Escu was hurt at a point in this season that they came limping into the postseason. Is Sandy Brondello perfect? Of course not. No, there are plenty of, you know, criticisms that you can make about the way that she handles this team, maybe some lack of adjustments that she's made at certain points in time. But Cass, we have seen over and over again, time and time again in sports, sometimes moving on from a coach because you don't think is good enough opens you up to the sea of suck that is out there in a certain coaching search, that you can do much, much, much worse than Sandy Brondello. And I fear the Liberty might have to learn that the hard way.
The question I always think about, because the rumblings had been there, I understand, even going back to like losing the finals in game 4 to an Aces team that was without 2 starters. Last year, you could make the argument that they, maybe should have been more dominant or didn't reach their peak. Like, I understand why it happened. But when you're talking about letting go of a coach, I think the question should always be, okay, well, then who? She didn't bring you a championship. To Becky Hammond's point yesterday, she talked long with us about this. You're not going to win a championship every single year. She brings up Greg Popovich, She's like, he won 5. That means 15 years he didn't win. I completely agree. I think it's going to be an interesting coaching search because I totally agree. You absolutely do not want a young, new coach leading this group. This is not a rebuilding group, if these free agents come back, and I'm sure they do. And even like this is the New York Liberty, and that means something different now than it did 5 years ago. Like the New
Yes.
York Liberty now, for the first time in their existence, they are champions. This is the standard. And while I understand you're upset you didn't meet that standard this year, okay, well, who are you going to bring in who's going to keep you at that standard,
And who built that standard? Sandy Brondello.
It's going to be a man, and we're going to be mad. Because someone asked me this today, guys. I've been getting this question like, Noelle Quinn getting let go, Sandy Brondello getting let go, right? We went through, don't forget, just a year ago, half of the league had to replace their head coaches.
Mhm.
Half of the league. And we have 5 new men that stepped up into positions. And I'm not anti-men, I'm not. But I also believe that in a league that is 100% women, we should at least have half of the coaches representing that. I believe that half of the coaches should be people that have either coached in this league for a long time or have played in this league. So I'm curious, like, what's happening right now? I don't think, again, like, I thought about maybe a coach like Breanna January. Played in this
Love
league,
Breanna January.
respectful,
Love her.
has been an assistant coach, currently on the Indiana Fever, helping this team hopefully get to a finals. But are we trusting a first-time head coach with this monumental opportunity? The
Mhm.
Connecticut
Fair
Sun
question.
hired an international coach that had not coached in the United States prior to be their coach of the WNBA this season. Was that the right or wrong move? I don't think the Connecticut Sun had the roster to compete with everyone else, but that was certainly interesting. So I'm just curious, like, what is the pedigree that this coach needs to come in here and have? And is it going to be a man? Or do we care to make sure that coaches represent the product on the floor? I will tell you as a broadcaster of this league that I care. I care that there are head coaches that represent the product, but I'm not so sure the league does. And if it resembles what happened last year in the offseason, it won't. It will not represent what the league is.
I will tack onto that as well. I think it's also we're bringing in the league, is bringing in former NBA coaches, assistants, that type of thing. And I think it's like a bigger thing. We talked about this with expansion. Like, I think in many ways we're almost going back to that 2000s era where NBA teams are now heavily involved in the WNBA. They see the dollar signs, they see what they can get from it. And so for them, they're often looking at the NBA coaching ranks. As for Breanna January, she's going to be a great head coach somewhere when she wants to go someplace. It's going to be a lose-lose situation, I think, if she were to take the New York Liberty job, because everyone has been a first-year something in their life, in their profession, and it's really, really hard.
Yeah. Yeah. But if you're Sandy Brondello, look, man, I came here. We were in the playoffs every year. I won a championship. We were in the finals the other year. I put together one of the best rosters that we've seen in the last decade in the WNBA, and I won a championship. Like,
Yeah.
cool. Somebody else is going to hire you. If she wants to stay in the league, she will easily be welcomed into the league. I
if-
don't agree with this
if
for
I'm-
New York.
I'm with you. I think it's foul. If I'm Seattle, I'm picking up the phone 10 minutes ago to bring Sandy Brondello in for an interview. And Cass, you brought up a good point too in one of your most recent articles about how the money and the attention and the viewership and the investment into the W might change some things. Maybe it turns the heat up a little bit on coaches' seats. And I do get that. I do understand that. The more and more you invest into something, the more and more you want out of it. And a first round exit doesn't meet the ticket prices of the New York Liberty, the expectation of the New York Liberty, the money invested into the New York Liberty. I do get it. But to that, I say, be careful. Be very, very
I
careful
agree.
when your expectation and your standard is perfection. Because if that's your standard,
Yeah.
you're going to be really upset and you're going to be disappointed more often than not. And then you find yourself digging yourself in a hole trying to seek that perfection year over year over year. Like you said, Becky Hammond said, you're not going to win a championship every single year. That's just unrealistic. So don't have unrealistic expectations.
Yeah, they pulled a New York Knicks, right? Like, hey, you get a
Yes.
coach to get you as
They
far
pulled
as
the
you've been
Knicks.
before. And then you decide,
Yes.
so what's, New York, it's not friendly there. In case you haven't been, it's not friendly. They aren't nice. There's rats and people yell at you there. And they fire coaches after they do really well with their teams. I also just want to say, too, that we have, though, the most recent best example of a first-time head coach having success in a league, which is Natalie Nakase. And so I will say that
Yes.
we must acknowledge her, because for the Bree Januaries and those that may come after, she set an example that you can be a first-time head coach in this league of an expansion, bring players in, and experience success. And so hopefully that puts some faith in the other front offices around the league. So maybe it's not, a young player or young former player, young coach that's going to Liberty, but maybe they're going to Toronto. Maybe they're going to Portland. I certainly think that building back WNBA basketball in Portland behind a face that has played in the league fits Portland.
No doubt.
But
I've
she
said it
didn't win a
before, I'll say it
championship.
again. True.
Say again, Cass?
But she didn't win a championship. So if you're the New York Liberty, that wouldn't meet your standard.
I'm with you. I'm with you. I was trying to say something nice, but yeah, I don't agree with what they
No,
did. To me,
I
that was-
agree. I
Yeah.
agree with
Yeah.
you completely. That like for expansion teams, for teams that are more in rebuild mode, yeah, all of these first-time coaches, like it'll be fine. It'll be great. They're gonna grow. But I think also to your point, and you would probably agree, these coaches like a Natalie Nakase who have shown some success in their first year, maybe they just missed the playoffs or they are swept by the Minnesota Lynx. You keep them and you let them grow and build the
Yeah.
foundation and become a champion.
Yeah. Yeah, to me, you give Sandy that roster and everybody stays for the next 3 years, you're winning 2 more championships. I think.
I don't think you're wrong. But one more thing
Yeah.
that I do want to get to before we wrap up here. A big story that came out Tuesday afternoon. It spread like wildfire that Angel Reese did not do an exit interview with the Chicago Sky. Now, everything that Angel Reese doesn't do or doesn't say spreads like wildfire. Now, that's exactly what happened, that Angel Reese didn't do an exit interview with the Sky, so now everyone is saying Angel Reese is all about her, Angel Reese wants out, Angel Reese doesn't have a future in Chicago. Now, maybe Angel Reese doesn't have a future in Chicago. I don't know that. But Cass, I would like you to shed some light to maybe clarify this for all of us, me and Ice and people that might be new to the league. Just clarify what's going on or what could be going on behind closed doors between Angel and the Sky.
Yeah, this is a far bigger issue than Angel. I think Angel has just been the name, and the Sky are just the name because of everything going on there. Not often, most of the time, in sports, you have exit interviews. So you lose your final game of the season, whenever that might be, the regular season finale, the semifinals, the finals a couple years ago, the New York Liberty, the morning after they lost to the Aces, did exit interviews. And so an exit interview is an opportunity for reporters to ask all of these questions about what are you doing in the offseason? Are you planning on coming back? The question that you had mentioned earlier, do you think your head coach should keep their job? Whatever, what have you. these are the questions that are asked. What's happening in the WNBA right now is that a lot of teams are deciding not to do these exit interviews, and it's my understanding that they are not required to. So in a case like Angel Reese, this guy did exit interviews. She, Courtney Vandersloot, and who was the third? There's a third
Ariel
player,
Atkins.
Ariel Atkins,
Ariel.
did not do them that day. For whatever reason, they were given that excuse. I think that is the first issue, whatever that issue is. They scheduled them a week later. They said at a later date, and now they have since canceled them after what happened in New York, where New York did not hold exit interviews for whatever reason. I think it's a continued just downsizing on media access. I think it hurts fans in the long run, and I think what you're going to see moving forward is when a team does lose that night, they're going to be asked these difficult questions that I think we all agree they shouldn't have to answer that night. But that's the situation that reporters are going to be forced into to give you, the fans, the answers to questions that you have about what your team is going to look like in the offseason and in the year to come.
I love
Yeah.
that answer. Because I think that's it. I think that's it. Yeah, I think it shapes what we do forward. It shapes the media's questions. It shapes the hard-hitting questions. You know, my critique of the question to Breanna Stewart right after, they're losing and they're on the podium is like, hey, dude, they just lost. Wait until the next media opportunity. But as Cass put it to me, like, there's not going to be one. They don't have to do exit interviews. They don't have to talk against the media after this season. And so you are forced to ask tough questions in vulnerable moments, sad moments, right? And you don't want to ask those questions. Like, I want to make that clear as a journalist. You don't want to ask that type of question. You just need to do your job, though. Like, some of us still got to go home and eat at the end of the day. And so you need to ask that in order to get the answer and get the story, etc. To me, I approach it like, be a professional. Be a professional. If you're a professional and you want us to treat you like a professional, which is all we've been barking about with WNBA for the last 5 to 10 years, be a professional. Do the exit interview, have the conversation, whatever it is, and get out and be a professional. We criticized, Angel Reese's thoughts a couple of pods ago about, her thoughts about how the Chicago season had ended up and what she said about Courtney Vandersloot, etc. And we criticized those because of the timing. Because Cass and I both felt like as long as she said that during the exit interview, postseason, it would have been fine. The problem is you said that while they were currently playing. Yeah, so to me, Caroline, I'm just like, hey, you had so much to say during the season. Let's say it in the exit interview where it's professional. You never know what's going to happen. You never, ever know in this league what's going to happen, what coaches are going where, what's happening next. To me, you do the exit interview, you show up. I also will say, I think the exit interviews and players doing them and not is also a reflection of how they feel about their coach. I feel comfortable saying that. I think it is a reflection about how you feel about your coach as an extension of the front office. If I'm going to go and give my thoughts and see how things can get better or worse, etc., I'm going to go. If I don't go and show that I don't care and I don't want to put in the time and energy to do so, fine. I think the only person that may be okay with not going to the exit interview is Courtney Vandersloot. You were hurt for predominantly the entire season. You sat there and you were being supportive. I'm not sure what you may have to say. You may have already said it to those that were in the front office as you've been around. But for the Angel Reese and Ariel Atkins, to me, whether you plan to leave the organization or not, you still should do the exit interview, give your thoughts, hear whatever needs to be said, and go from there and treat it like a professional because you never know what's going to happen in the future. And I feel like a player like Ariel Atkins, I was more so surprised with her, I think, to be quite honest, because in my interactions with Ariel, she has always seemed very diplomatic, open to chat and communicate. And so I know, I'm sure every player on Chicago's roster is frustrated, and probably that's the last place they want to be. But
It
on
should
behalf
be.
but on behalf of professionalism, for me, you should show up and do the exit interview and then go. Then you can exit peacefully.
Sometimes we got to do things we don't want to do,
Well put.
but we have to
Yeah.
do.